Al Floss presents the complete and alarming history of America's greatest garage band, the Stools.
1958 was a tough year for rock and roll.
Elvis is drafted, Jerry Lee Lewis marries his 13-year-old cousin, folk music becomes popular.
Kenny Rogers signs his first recording contract, surf music is born. Tough year.
So rockets are blowing up at Cape Canaveral, Castro is taking over Cuba, the Russians launch Sputnik.
And Little Richard quits music for the first time.
But through it all, the Stools get their third album out, Dropping the Kids Off at the Pool, which was a smash.
1958 was known for its fads and crazes. Black and gold fruit boots, monogram sweaters, sock hops, 3D movies, beatniks, the twist, the bop, the stroll, the hand jive, the Madison, and countless others. The Stools were trying to create a craze of their own.
Don Wilson and Bob Bogle meet at a car dealership in Tacoma, Washington. When Wilson tries to unload a lemon on Bogle, they got to talking and realized they have a common interest in music.
Wilson and Bogle start to play together as the Veritones. And they eventually add Noki Edwards on bass and Skip Moore on the drums, and soon they changed their name to The Ventures.
They recorded a cover of an old Chet Atkins song, Walk Don't Run. But then Skip Moore quits the band to work at his father's gas station. He took a $25 buyout against any royalties for the future of the song.
So Moore tried to sue the rest of the Ventures when the song became a hit, but didn't have any luck. They bring in this cat named Howard Johnson, no relations, to play the drums, and that remains their lineup for years.
The Ventures were at the cutting edge of the instrumental surf music craze and pioneered the concept album with their 1961 The Colorful Ventures album. Don't think the Stools didn't take notice.
The first single off the Dropping the Kids album was inspired by the Ventures. Elvin figured, if California could have its surf craze, why couldn't the East Coast have one?
The surf up in Boston isn't anything to write home about, but Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, you can get some really freshies over there. So, the Stools record the song Myrtle Beach, hoping to ignite the East Coast surf scene.
School's out, now it's time to teach on. All the dorks that don't practice what they preach on. Once they reach Myrtle Beach, grab yourself a sandy peach on. While the sponges and the shreds they try to bleach on. You have reached Myrtle Beach.
A great East Coast surf classic. Again, with some very emotional theremin playing in the mix. Years ahead of its time. Sadly, Myrtle Beach is really just a bunch of golf courses, strip clubs, and a naval base. Not much of a music scene. So the East Coast surf sound would really pretty much fade away. Like the crashing waves on the beach.
I think that South Carolina's contribution to rock music gets a bit overshadowed by their, neighbor sister state to the north. But make no mistake about this, South Carolina has indigenous rock music. Hootie and the Blowfish are from there. Darius Rucker.
Dance crazes were very big in '58. You had Bobby Freeman's Do You Wanna Dance? You had Hank Ballard's The Twist, Limbo Rock, Let's Twist Again. Not the Chubby Checker versions. And well, the Stools came up with their own dance craze, the Mutt's Nuts.
Who didn't dance the Mutt's Nuts in 1958? Well, I didn't. I wasn't born yet. But I think my parents did.
On the ning nang nong, you go along to get along. Is that so wrong? Mount up. On the nang nong ning, she wears a wedding ring, but that don't mean a thing. Mount up.
You know, That's the Mutt's Nuts was a reach. But remember what they were up against at the time. Radio had just introduced Muzak, 8 hours of uninterrupted recorded music, or elevator music as we like to call it. The Stools were just reaching and just looking for ways to stand out.
Go along to get along. Is that so wrong? Mount up on the nang nong ning. She wears a wedding ring, but that don't mean a thing. Mount up on the nong ning nang.
Now, regardless of which story you buy, whether Little Richard's plane crashed in the Philippines or maybe that he saw Sputnik and took it as a sign from God, Little Richard was out of rock and roll for the time being. So Cosmo gets the idea to camp up his stage act a little bit, and he even starts playing the piano, trying to fill the void, I think. And boy, Little Richard was pissed when he found that out.
Now you have to remember, Little Richard ripped off his whole act from an old drag queen named Esquerita that he met at a bus station in Macon, Georgia.
Apparently, Little Richard is down in New Orleans recording with Bumps Blackwell, and it isn't going well. He starts playing an X-rated version of Tutti Frutti during a break the way Esquerita taught him, and Blackwell thinks he's got a hit, if they can clean up the lyrics.
Art Roop loves Esquerita's version of Tutti Frutti, and it becomes Little Richard's first single on Specialty Records, launching his career.
So Esquerita actually gets Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps to back him up on a couple of demo recordings. But Esquerita is so over the top. I mean, nobody will touch those records. Think about it. Little Richard was actually the tame version of Esquerita.
He would record a number of sides with people like Dr. John, young Jimi Hendrix, even Elvis's backup singers, the Jordanaires, but nothing ever really took off. In 1961, Capitol Records did release one Esquerita album, but to no avail.
I know he recorded an album with Berry Gordy at Motown, but that's scrolled away in the vault somewhere, assuming they didn't wipe it out altogether.
I know Esquerita played piano on the John Hammond song, Taking Care of Business, and later had a band with one of the Neville brothers. But he kind of just faded away from the music scene, which is sad when you consider all the squawking Little Richard does about how he was the architect of rock and roll, but he never mentions Esquerita.
Esquerita, the flamboyant father of rock and roll, without whom Little Richard, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, Elton John, all the way up to Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Lady Gaga would never have had a career. He died tragically of complications from AIDS in 1986. He was working as a squeegee person in Brooklyn at the time.
Now, Mick Jones from The Clash recorded a tribute to Esquerita on the big audio dynamite album Tighten Up, Volume 88. Do yourself a favor, you gotta check that out.
Now, this may all be Hollywood horse hockey, but as the story goes, around that time, Antonio Moretti was staying with his pal Hugh O'Brien at his mansion in Beverly Hills. O'Brien is TV's Wyatt Earp. One day, this actress, Melba Bennett, knocks on the door and asks Antonio for private acting lessons, thinking it's O'Brien. Well, one thing leads to another. He starts chasing her around the house. She falls down a flight of stairs. She's not seriously hurt, but she ends up suing Antonio for $65 million. The only thing is, she thinks Antonio is Hugh O'Brien, so O'Brien gets stuck with the lawsuit.
I think the Stools backed Hugh O'Brien on his one and only album as a payback for the whole lawsuit mess.
Hugh O'Brien was the last person John Wayne ever shot on screen. It was the movie The Shootist. Just thought you'd want to know that.
In August, Eddie Cochran uses overdubbing to record all the instruments and vocals himself on the song Summertime Blues, which goes to number 8 on the charts. This gives Cosmo big ideas. He locks himself in the studio for 3 weeks, and nothing comes out of it. Well, nothing that Al Floss is willing to release.
Teamster boss Jimmy Hoffa's right-hand man, Harold Gibbons, takes his charge to start a carnival workers union too seriously and thinks that it should include rock and roll bands, which he sees as even lower than carnies on the entertainment food chain. The Stools and Al Floss will repeatedly fight with Teamster strong arms throughout the summer of '58.
Yes, Al Floss did order extra security in the summer of '58, but that was because of the crazy, screaming teenage girls, not the Teamsters. Any violence between the Stools and the Teamsters was just good-natured horseplay.
Okay, Mom, we've put on the oversized sweaters, we've taken the walk on the beach, and we've just sat down to a hot cup of flavored coffee. Let me guess, you want to talk about female hygiene products, right?
No, dear. I think it's time we talked about lard.
When it's time to talk to your children about lard, will you know how? Write the Lard Council for your free copy of the booklet, Lard and Your Kids, or visit our website at www.lard.com.
Thanks, Mom. Maybe you're right. I think I will wait until I'm married before I cook with lard.
I had a feeling you would.
A public service from the Lard Council.
By September of 1958, the bottom had started to fall out. Jerry Lee Lewis sold only 400 tickets for his show at the 7,000-seat Nashville Auditorium. Rock and roll had hit an all-time low.
About this time, human water bug Don Kirshner opens up the Brill Building in New York for songwriters and producers of pop music. You know, it's sounding yet another death knell for rock and roll.
Now, the Brill Building plays a pretty interesting part in the story of the Stools. In the late 1950s, Neil Sedaka and his high school band, the Tokens, were just burning up Abraham Lincoln High School and pretty much the rest of the Brighton Beach area with his singles, the ones he wrote, While I Dream and Come Back Joe. And soon, they caught the ear of Don Kirshner, the legendary Jabba the Hutt of the Brill Building in New York.
But Kirshner wasn't interested in Neil Sedaka, the performer. He wanted the songwriter. So when Sedaka left the Tokens, he and his partner, Howard Greenfield, tried to write hits for other artists.
Neil Sedaka's passion to perform never left him, and he continued to bug Kirshner about letting him write and record his own songs. In 1959, when Sedaka's song, "Oh Carol," became a hit in several international markets, Kirshner had to give in.
Not thinking that Neil Sedaka would succeed in America, Kirshner sent him to tour Brazil with a bunch of local musicians who Sedaka was led to believe spoke no English. Well, they worked up arrangements for 8 songs and they hit the South American road. Of course, the backing band wasn't Brazilian. It was the Stools, pretending that they didn't speak English so they wouldn't have to put up with the whiny teenage singer while they were on the road.
Sedaka went on to record with 10cc in England and eventually, albeit briefly, became a schmaltz rock star.
The Stools would remember their time with Neil Sedaka finally and would go on to record the song Roar many years later, which told the story, the true story now, of what happened to Sedaka's first band, the Tokens.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps real tight. In the jungle, the mighty jungle, no need to be polite. If he sees something that he might like, he just roars. In the Tokens, the mighty Tokens, Sadaka quit the band. Told the tokens, the mighty tokens, that they could go pound sand. Then the lion song came to hand, and they scored. Who'd have thought the Wimowee song would be so big? They never got any of the rights, but they didn't give a fig. Knew the song from the Weaver.
Neil Sedaka would go on to write Love Will Keep Us Together for the Captain and Tennille, a duo that would loom large in the legend of the Stools. But that's a story for another time.
They're lip syncing on bandstand. They just roll.
Hi, I'm famous radio personality Charles Laquadera, here to tell you about a fantastic offer from our friends at Dutchco. It's a brand new long-playing album called The Rock and Roller Disco Hits of the Stools. And you can only get it by taking advantage of this TV offer.
That's right, Charles. The Rock and Roller Disco Hits of the Stools is only available for a limited time. And you get such great hits as Awkward Arm, Eskimo Brother, and the dance craze, Beer Me.
Starting out in the morning, you're just adorning. When you're done veneering, why don't you beer me?
But that's not all. You also get the hits Frat Girl, Jackson Hole, and What's That You Say?
Hey, what about my favorite? You Are My Oprah.
You know it, Charles. Everyone's favorite disco songs of the Stools are included in a massive 2-disc set. So call now, and you could be enjoying songs like Triple Word Score within 4 to 6 weeks. Don't like the telephone? And who does? Just mail your check to Dutchco Teleproducts, Inc., Elks Grove Village, Illinois, 90007, USA.
Because if it says it's Dutchco, it's so-so.
In October, Conway Twitty's It's Only Make Believe goes to #1 in the US and UK. Eventually, he'd switch over to country music and have 55 #1 hits.
You know, Conway Twitty had a couple of the finest sideburns in music history, but I gotta tell you, Noddy Holder from Slade would be a close second.
You know, Conway Twitty was drafted by the Phillies out of high school, but then he was drafted by Uncle Sam, so he never got to the show, as they say.
I think a lot of Conway Twitty's first single, It's Only Make Believe's success, was because Twitty sounded an awful lot like Elvis Presley on that song. And the record company didn't do anything to discourage the rumors that it was really Elvis singing under a fake name.
He had a couple of more rock and roll singles, but quickly fled to the greener fields of country music.
The Stools could see the writing on the wall and eventually came out with their own country-flavored single, Drink Until You Want Me.
Well, it looks like you are looking at him, and that would really bug me if it weren't for this gin, 'cause the gin don't lie on the table too long. When I'm dry, always write the wrong song. Won't you drink till you want me? Drink till you don't care. And drink till you can't see. Baby, I'll be there. Don't normally go out. Half the girls come to me. Thought I'd try something different, see what I could get for free. It seemed worth a try, but I go the best I can do. Both of our sakes, let's have another round of brew. Won't you drink till you want
college kids were tending to look down their nose at country music. But for some reason, they seem to overlook the hillbilly roots of the Stools music, much like the Elizabethan Londoners and their love for Shakespeare's songs about the goat herders.
I'm no Brad Pitt. You ain't what's-her-face Jolene. So stop being a hypocrite. At least you're drinking for free. Won't you drink it till you want me? Drink it till you don't care. And drink it till you can't see. Baby, I'll be there. Won't you drink it till you want me? Drink it till you don't care. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Drink it till you can't see. It beats the hell out of solitaire.
In December, Antonio, because of his blossoming relationship with Cheetah Rivera, is offered the part of Officer Krupke in the original London production of West Side Story, but turns it down when he learns that Krupke doesn't have any songs. Their relationship quickly fizzles out after that. Just saying.
His heart once again broken, Antonio and the rest of the Stools turn their attention to the fourth album, Meet the Stools. And why would they name their fourth album Meet the Stools, a clever title normally reserved for debut albums? Find out next time as the complete and alarming history of America's greatest garage band, the Stools, continues. Join us then, won't you?
On the ning, nang, nong. Go along to get along. Is that so wrong? Mount up. On the nang, nong, ning. She wears a wedding ring, but that don't mean a thing. Mount up. On the nong, ning, nang. South of the overhang to Lipton Sea Tang.